Alrighty, so this is Decent We the People News, y'all. And I've been hitting and missing on a couple of my videos of property tax. Why? Because we're in that season, right? And some of y'all may be behind. Some of y'all may be getting tired of it. And I was just doing this video to give you pointers, okay? Number one, I'm Decent for We the People News. And I'm not an attorney and I'm not giving legal advice, okay? This is educational purposes only, okay? Never legal advice. Do your own research, all right? You're responsible for yourselves. I never look straight forward. I always look around me to be able to protect myself by any means necessary, okay? And y'all should too, all right? At this point, the reason why I say not giving legal advice and all that anyway is because what I say, or what these videos saying, is hearsay. Do your own research, okay? These three people right here was tossed into something they didn't want to do, all right? They could not find an attorney that would represent them in a proper manner, all right? This basically started a couple years ago where the executive orders all over the place came from, okay, for whatever reason it was. All right, so when we're talking about property tax, all right, every constitution says, even federal constitution, we have a right to property, people, a right. And a right cannot be turned into a privilege unless you give it away. And even then, you can't even give it away, but yet it happens, okay? They can't kidnap you, but they do it. All right, so there's this thing called Sidis, which is the reason why I really did this video, right? Because nobody really heard or comprehend or looked up Sidis, okay? So we really need to learn this as on property-wise, how they are supposedly trying to get AMRAP jurisdiction, okay? And violating your rights and this, that, here, and there. And this is one of the better ones I've heard of someone speaking of, okay? Number one, all these guys got their different ways of speaking. Some is calm, and some is direct, and just like our favorite man, oh, geez, where the storm clouds gathering, Derek, right, is well outspoken. Okay. All right, so let's go proceed forward on this because I talked enough. All right, that was 2 minutes long or 3 minutes long. Bad me.
Mistake, which I think Carl Bryant has actually trapped the judge into a position where Carl Bryant doesn't ever not get sanctions. I don't see it. But nonetheless, yeah. What is most concerning to me, and then I'm going to give the floor to you guys, is the fact that none of these attorneys that I've faced yet, I'm not saying there's none of them.
I'm going to stretch this out a little bit longer because some of these words, even if you decide to get an attorney, right, if you actually tell your attorney to use this and they're not doing it, then that can be filed as a bar grievance because he's not representing you in a proper manner. All right? He's acting in bad faith.
Well, now, there's got to be good ones somewhere. But I haven't faced one yet that understands or grasps the fundamental principles of our system of American jurisprudence. Yeah. Now. Oh, you're muted, Alphonse. Unmute.
It's just like dogs are making a commotion. Listen, these municipal corporations operate under a charter, and it's usually the county charter. And right in the county charter, there's a power section, and it states that the charter is subservient to the federal and state constitution. So now these attorneys operate under this guise that because of the statute, first of all, here's what's going on with your local municipalities. You have two taxing authorities. You have a state taxing authority that generally the county operates under. That's where they're getting their assessments and where they create these assessments. Then you have your local taxing authority, which is the town you live in, the borough you live in. They operate under a separate section of statutes, but the statutes that the local municipalities operate under, they depend on the state statutes that the county's using, because they're all operating under that assessment. It all comes off that assessment. All your local taxes, your trash and your sewer and all this other stuff they charge you, is all coming off of that county assessment, which is under the state. So most of your problems are going to come with your local municipalities, and here's what's going on. No one, like I live in the township of Aston, nobody from the government of the township of Aston is walking into that court and getting up on the stand and testifying that I owe them a tax. It's not going to happen, okay? No one from the legislature, the Pennsylvania legislature, the assembly, and all the assembly is, when you're the assembly, that means the Congress and the Senate combined. That's what the assembly is. So no one from the assembly, the state assembly, is coming into court stating that Title 53, which is Pennsylvania's local taxing statute, is going to apply to me. So now no one from the assembly is coming in. No one from the township of Aston's coming in. Who's the only guy making the claim that Title 53 applies to me? It's the attorney.
The lawyer.
The lawyer.
The attorney.
Now, let me ask you.
I'm going to stop right there. That's the reason why the courts or the lawyer cannot have subject matter jurisdiction. Right? There's no affidavit of a claimant, people. All right? This affidavit of claim. Mr. and Mrs. Callahan from my place, right, has never signed an affidavit to make a claim that I owe them something, or a verifiable proof of contract that I entered.
Yes. Does an attorney have to impose laws upon people? Isn't that what he's doing when he files a municipal claim against you?
Yep.
Because that's
Exactly.
they operate as a summary. That operates as basically, it's considered like a summary judgment filing in a way, because they just automatically grant the lien. So obviously that statute, first of all, he can't impose statutes upon you, but that statute that he's using, that local tax statute, can apply to you for one reason: violates due process of law. Okay, it's right off the bat. You were never served. There's no complaint, and any of your local taxes that are brought against you, here's what they're doing. Here's what you need to separate jurisdiction in your head. It's not an in personam action. In other words, it's not against you, and they'll say it's against your property. Well, that's the most illogical thing I've ever heard. So my property committed a crime. Okay?
Well,
This is how they're operating.
I for one believe your house is very offensive, and
No.
I believe it has committed the crime of unsightliness to the people of the township of Aston. So there you go.
Listen, I know he's got a drinking problem. I'm trying to get him help, but he's not going to stop him. Guy can fly with a case of beer and snatches it.
They don't have AA for homes, is what you're saying?
So this dumb in rem stuff, this drove me back to American jurisprudence, and lo and behold, what do I find in American jurisprudence? Where it states that here's where your Sidis comes in. You hear James talk about it, you hear Brandon talk about it. We talk about Sidis and what a Sidis actually is. Well, lo and behold, I sort of stumble upon what a citation from the court explains what a Sidis is. Here's what a Sidis is. It's determined by what they call the minimum contacts, not contracts, contacts standard, okay? And there's three elements to it. Number one, here's the funny part. When it mentions it, it says it's talking about the entity itself. It talks about itself must be exercising a privilege. Well, I'm not an itself, okay? I'm not an entity. So it's got to be exercising a privilege, okay? The action brought against you has to be due to actions that you're doing in the forum state. So if you're home eating, sleeping, drinking, and what Steve says, monkey business, they are not actions in the forum state. So there's number two. you're not conducting any actions in the foreign state. Number 3, it states that the acts must be substantial to create a nexus with the state. You eating, sleeping, drinking, and doing whatever is not creating a nexus. Okay? So there's what your sidis really comes from. And it states, that same citing states, the location of the property in the state is not enough for in rem or quasi-in rem jurisdiction. In other words, just because they claim you're in the state of Louisiana or Utah or Pennsylvania does not matter. You've got to meet that minimum contact standard. Now, how would you meet that minimum contact standard? Well, if you had a business and you registered it with the state, then you'll become a taxpayer, which means you're an entity organized and incorporated under the state statutes and doing business in the state. That would create a sidis or a nexus with the state. That would create in rem jurisdiction for the local municipality who's bringing an action against you. Because now you're using your property for financial benefit for a business that you registered with the state. You're not using your property for your own business. You've actually went out and registered and what's the first thing you do when you register for a license? You've got to give them a permanent address.
That's right.
That creates the sidis, okay? So when you create that permanent address, when you file for that license, or when you file with the state, that's when you become domiciled in the state, under the jurisdiction of the state. It actually states that. When you become you're a creature of the state, when you become an incorporated entity under state statutes, you become domiciled in the state, which means under the jurisdiction of the state. Now, what you're going to find is there's a lot of presumptions going on. They will just cite statutes. The lawyer will cite statutes. Well, we've got a problem here. First of all, nobody from the Township of Aston's coming in saying them statutes apply to me. Nobody from the Pennsylvania Assembly that wrote those statutes is coming in or submitted anything saying that those statutes apply to me. I got one guy determining that, the attorney. So that's what I go after. I say, hey, listen, I don't see any facts on the record like James talking about. He's seen no facts in any case he's got. Same here. So what I did in my last little headbutting thing with the local township, I took a little page out of Steve's book. Steve said, why don't you go file for a summary judgment against him? I said, well, that's a good idea. And how can I do that? Like James talking about and Brand's talking about. Did that lawyer, remember, nobody from the township came in to testify. The last hearing we had, he had no witnesses. I said, he's got no witnesses here, sir. He can't place any facts on the court record. And and a lot of times the statutes will they initially file as prima facie evidence. Means on the face it might be true. It only stands as prima facie evidence until you challenge it. Once you challenge it, prima facie evidence goes down the crapper. Gone, okay? Mm-hmm. Now we got to deal with affidavits and testimony. We got to get people in here to stand up for this claim. So a lot of what's happening to you with your local county or your local municipalities, presumption. So I always isolate the attorney. What I did in the last filing, I isolated the attorney. Then I filed motion for summary judgment. And how did I set that up? In your summary judgment motion, you've got to put a list of undisputed facts in there. Okay, that's part of how to write it. And you've got to write a memorandum of law to support it. So I set it up with a record request. Before there was ever any hearing, I did a record request with the local township, and I asked, provide any record or any legally or lawfully promulgated record that evidences Title 53 applies to myself or my property. And you get the standard response, as Brandon and James will tell you. We did this incredible search, this extensive search, but we couldn't find any records. Great. Thank you very much, So you hit it with that. Provide me any record, or any legally lawfully promulgated record that evidences I'm a taxpayer of the Commonwealth. Because I have the definitions of what a taxpayer is. And instinctively, it'll turn around and say, we have no such records in our possession. Well, great. Because guess what I used when I did my undisputed facts in my motion for summary judgment? the responses from the record request. Hey, I asked these people, do they have any facts that Title 53 applies? They said, we don't have any records. I asked them if I'm, they have evidence I'm a taxpayer. They said, well, we don't have no records of that either. Then I asked the killer question, who hired and directed Robert Day, the attorney, to file liens against my property? And would they instinctively say, we have no records of that?
Hey, were you able to find, I'm not going to say a real name here, Peppermint found in Texas, the 21 days to remove the lien? Did you find that in Pennsylvania also?
That's like, Texas has some really cool laws. That's one of them. I can't find that in Pennsylvania, but we have one similar. It's called theft of immovable property. Okay? It's anyone exerting any kind of rights against your property for the benefit of another. Isn't that what that attorney's doing? Isn't he placing liens on property he don't own for the benefit of his client? Well, to me, there's no doubt that's theft of immovable property. There's no way it can't be.
And just so everybody knows here, we have a Sixth Circuit ruling on under the takings clause. I just want y'all to know this right here that just happened a couple weeks ago. While it isn't exactly what I would like to hear from a federal judge, nonetheless, it's the first in a set of rulings where a judge ruled correctly that $20,000 in supposed owed taxes, it doesn't grant the government the right to come in and take a $300,000 home, and as such, they would have to compensate it under the eminent domain clause. This is a step in the right direction. It's not all going to come, the wheels are all going to come off at one time, but nonetheless, say you do owe $20,000. This is hypothetically, how are they coming and steal your whole home and making you destitute and homeless? That's not the purpose of property in the United States.
You're going to love this. So Pennsylvania's got a unique process called a writ of cere facie.
Yeah, we just filed one here. We do too.
Yeah, after there's a judgment, they could file for a writ saying that you've got 10 days to submit an affidavit of defense, or we're going to come in and seize the property. Okay, but here's the problem: clerks don't enter judgments. They can't make judgments. Okay, so no judge has ever seen this stuff. Now here's the great part: I look at Title 53 in Pennsylvania, what they're moving under, and I pull up the actual writ, the wording of the writ. The clerk's signature's there on 53, and it's coming from the president of the court has to sign it. Guess what's missing from the writ that the clerk issues? The judge's signature. Nowhere on the writ is the judge's signature.
Well, this is funny because we'll expound on this too for just a second, because this coincides with James's issue too. All right, so this is for Gary's case against the city of Central for the theft of his motorcycle.
Okay, so we're going to stop there. They're jumping on a different deal. And, I don't know, y'all. It gives you some basics of what they're doing behind closed doors, even though your attorney may not be saying it. A couple of videos ago, I said something, and I'm going to say it again, right? I actually went into Court Watch. And I literally seen, and it was a property takings from people, right? And there is actually supposed to be public notice, okay? Number one, that's one of the other things you need to bring up too as well. If they're going to try to take your property, where is this verifiable proof that you actually did a lawful and a legal notice in public records, right? Newspapers, whatever their websites may be or anything. Show me evidence that you did such thing. Time, date, and all that. They can't just go backtrack and do, I want to see the newspaper clippings or this, that, here, and there. I want to see evidence, right? Because once again, they're following the claim. The burden of proof is on them. Okay, and go back to my point. Jumped off of it. I literally sat there and watched a man watch his attorney let the attorney that worked for taking property due to taxes walk all over him. And I don't know. I'm going under some presumptions. Don't matter how much it cost. If he paid the lawyer $6,000 to help him out on this, But he literally sat there in front of that man, did absolutely nothing, and the county attorney walked all over him and not one time even eject or anything. He just basically, agreed. That was it. All right. Then the guy paid that attorney, I don't remember the price, I'll just call it $6,000, thanked him. Okay. This is how numb we have become on law and don't even realize the attorney that he paid $6,000 to screwed him. People. Alright? Just saying. Anyway, this will be the People News. Till next time. Bye, y'all.